Alright guys, welcome to my video on how to make a breakable wall like this one in Amnesia. It's a secret passage and actually it's very easy. It barely needs a tutorial to make it so that you can just throw this at it to break it, but I'm gonna make a tutorial on how to actually just click on it to break it as it was done in the actual game, where you can choose whether to click on it or not. You would have to click it pretty fast though, so you click it once, makes some noise and particles. If you click it enough though, it'll if you click it like 3 times fast, it will break like that, and that takes a little bit of scripting, although if I were to reload the map right now, you don't actually need any scripting at all to just take this box and throw it at it. There you go. It doesn't require any scripting at all, and yeah, I was actually kind of surprised. It didn't really need anything like that. You just place it, and it's already defined in the entity that it can break like that. But anyways, let's get on with it, I guess. Alright, so here we are, and as always, just to go a little quick through them. If you are missing any of these files, actually I'm in the custom story folder right now in Amnesia custom stories. If you're missing any of these files, you can download them in my description, and also I have a link for all the code that I'm using as a pastebin link. And also, if you're using a Windows computer, you can still use this tutorial because it's done the exact same way. Just use a different text editor like Notepad++. Right, so I guess we'll just get started, and inside maps I have these 2 maps that I'm going to use this time. Well, it's one map, level 6 map. It's just, I'm just counting up. Anyways, these 2, the script file and the map file, and I'm just going to open the map file and place a few things, and then we're going to go into the scripting and finish up the things and make it work properly. So yeah. Alright, so after opening a map, I have this one, which is what I used in the example, just stripped from all the items. I trust that you can construct a level where it actually fits. The actual piece looks like the white mansion base on one side and the red one on the other side, so just be aware of that. Alright, so let's say we have this map here. Just go to entities, and let's drop down till we find special, which is way down there, and we go to mansion base on M, and here we have secret passage and secret passage broken. The broken one we don't need to do anything with. It's just what the first one is going to end up looking like. If you want to have it broken by default, then you can use that one, but if not, just place this entity wherever you would like it to be, which is right there for me. And it will look like that so far, and yeah, that's kind of how we want it. And afterwards you want to select this piece, and you can give it a name. Let's call it passage, if I didn't type that incorrectly. Passage, there we go. And alright, so that's the name we're going to use for scripting later. And then we go to entity. The first thing you want to do is full game save. Check off that, because if you break this wall and you leave the map and come back, then it's going to be reset unless you do this. So you probably want to make it stay broken. Even if you come back later, it's going to stay broken. Alright, so the top one, callback function, this is called when this thing is actually broken. It can be called on pickup, break, or on ignite. Neither of those, except for break, could actually happen to this one. You can't really pick it up, and you can't really ignite it, but you can break it. So this function can be called once it's broken. So I'm just going to type break wall. Press enter, and that will make so that whenever this wall is actually broken, it's going to call a function that I'm going to add just a small sanity boost, just to make it, yeah, you just achieved something. It's not necessary at all really, but most of these things added in this little tutorial is mostly just for small details that make your story look very, well, kind of professional, I guess, and somewhat nice, because A lot of people don't actually know how important small details are. Anyways, alright, so we have that if you wish. But on player interact callback, make sure this is not checked off, because or else you can only click it once. I'm going to type player interact or something like that. Right, so player, well, actually that's a little vague, I guess. We could do interact passage. That probably makes a little more sense. Let's just type that, interact passage. So whenever we click on this entity, which is the wall, it's going to pretty much, it's going to mess around with a few variables to make this work, but it's also going to play a sound and to make some particles appear. So if you, it ticks with variables to actually determine whether it's going to break or not, but the particles are always there. And that is all we need to do with that thing right there. And actually that's, yeah, there are a few things I guess we could add. Let's go to areas and make sure it's a script area. I'm just going to place one right here and resize it really small. This is for the particles, so you might want to place some of these like right next to the wall. And in the actual game, they used 4 of them. I'm just going to place 4 of them then. So I'm just going to place them like this. So it's like a stair going up, so that pretty much whenever you click it, it's going to choose a random one to put the particles on. So it's not on the same spot all the time. It's a random one. Actually, I did a little mistake here. Let's just delete 3 of them. Before you actually duplicate it, you probably want to give it a name, because or else it won't. Or else you would have to rename 4 of them. It's just a little more tedious. So I'm gonna call this one. Let's see, area. Particle _1, and as long as it ends with _1, it's going to keep counting. So when I duplicate it, it's now _2 and _3 and _4. So area particle 4, 1 2 3 4, and that will put some random particles around this general area. Alright, so we have that, and I guess there's only one thing I'm just going to add on the side. Actually, it's not that necessary, but since you can already break it just by throwing something at it, you could go to, like, I guess you could just use any entity that you can grab, but if you go on container and just choose something like a wood box and place it there, you can pick it up and throw it, and it will break. Yeah, let's just keep it there. It doesn't really matter that much. Because it's not part of this tutorial really, unless you just needed to know that this thing can break this thing without any scripting. Alright, so that is actually everything we need in the level. I don't think there's anything more, unless you want some, well, of course, in your personal level, but for this specific event. In the actual game, they added some block boxes right here so that you can like step up a little bit, because it might be a little tricky to jump into the hole since it goes a little down. It could be a little tricky to jump up that little ledge, so maybe put something under it that you can jump on top of. Could make it a little easier. But other than that, there's nothing that we actually need, so I'm just going to save the map here and we're gonna go over to scripting. Alright, so now let's open up that script file that we have right here, and I'm just gonna put it on the side. Right now it is completely empty, and we don't really need that much code. We need a little bit. The variables aren't that hard to understand, I think. It might be a little confusing if you haven't worked with it, but it shouldn't be too hard. And if you are having troubles, then you could of course copy my code, although I prefer if you do it yourself, because you learn a lot more from actually doing it. So it's important to actually know how it works instead of just knowing that it works, if you know what I'm saying. Alright, so if you remember, if we go on the entity again, on entity, yeah, here, interact passage, this is when you actually click it, so we're gonna make that function. And if you click on it or hover over it, it says syntax void function, which is interact passage, void interact passage, pretty much, string in entity. So that's the parameters. So we type in void interact passage. Sorry, my microphone's a little in the way of my keyboard. It's a little weird. Alright, so void interact passage open close parentheses, and inside here we type the parameters, which are for this one only string and symbol in as entity, just like that. So and then you open and close the code block right there, and inside here we're going to add pretty much most of this whole function. Just make sure that these parameters match what kind of function this is, which is an interact entity function. So inside here, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make a new variable. I'm just going to type int, and then the name of it, it could be pretty much anything, although it is really recommended. I'm not sure if it's exactly required, but it's very recommended to the name to have a lower capital to start with. That's just how the language in code works, so I recommend doing that. Just follow the guidelines of it. Anyway, this is going to be the amount of clicks. Like, this is a variable that changes depending on how many times you click it. So you would have to click it 3 times fast, or pretty fast, to actually break it, and if you're too slow it will reset the value. So this int is going to do, let's name it interact count with a lower I, just because. And after that we're going to do equals, and it's going to get local var int, which pretty much means that it's different every time. Whenever you call this variable, it's going to be something different, so it's not specific yet. And it's going to get the variable that we are going to make soon, so I'm not going to type anything more there yet. Below it though, let's add the var int. This is the one that is actually used in the script. So the ints are usually, they're primitive variables, but if you want to use the ones that are in the actual engine, you use the function called add, set, or get local var int, or float, but int is more general. Alright, so we type in add local var int. That is the name. Actually, I should probably just open up Chrome, and if we go on engine scripts here, let me put this on the side. This page I'll also have linked in the description. It has a list of all the functions that you can use. So under variables, here are the syntaxes and all that for your actual variables. So the one I'm using right now is add local var int, and it has these parameters which you have to define, which is the first one is a string as name, and the other one is an integer as value. So name and value, and that's what you type inside the parentheses, and that's how you know what to actually do. If you don't know, like if it's going to be 1 1 1 1 1 1 whatever inside here, you just look up on the page and it will tell you what it needs, what it requires to work. So the first one, since it is a string, you're going to need double quotes, and inside there we're going to type the name of the value. So I'm just going to call it hit count, and then we do comma. Next one is going to be how many values it's going to add. So I mean, it doesn't matter that much. I'm just going to add 1. So whenever you click on this, it's going to add a variable, which it adds it to 1, pretty much. If you don't understand it, you might understand it once we have set up everything. It could be a little confusing right now, but let's just finish up this, and then you might see a little more of how it actually works. After that, we're going to add a timer, and although I remember timers all the time, I just use timers a lot. I'm going to search it up here. So if you search up add timer, you can copy this line and paste it into your code. Just remember not to paste the void part, and I'm going to paste it right here. And well, this is how, if you don't know the parameters by heart or whatever, you can just copy and paste it into your code and define it afterwards. Name of the timer, it doesn't need a name, I'm just going to keep it empty. The time until it is executed is going to be half a second, so 0.5, half a second. And the function it's going to call, it's another string, type 2 quotes, and inside there we're going to type the name of the function that's going to be called after half a second, which is going to decrease the hit count. So well, it's not exactly resetting the hit count, but it is decreasing it. So, but it's pretty much like resetting it. but resetting it would be wrong to call, so I'm just going to call it decrease hit count. Pretty much after, if you're not quick enough, it will, like right here, it adds a variable, but if you're not quick enough to add another variable, it's going to lose a variable. So the passage only breaks if the variable is 3. But you would have to click it 3 times in a row within half a second to actually break it, or else it will decrease. We'll be losing variables every half second, so you would have to click until the number of variables right here is equals to 3. And now I guess you could just finish up this one, because the interact count right here is going to be the same name as the hit count here, so I'm just going to copy that and paste it in right there. So we're going to use that a little later for when we're actually checking for whether to break the wall or not. So that are most of the variables, and let's just add some more space here. And next up, actually, let's just add that particle system that's going to appear every time. So we go on this page, we search up create, what did I type? Yeah, particle system at entity. This function, copy everything except the void, and paste it into your code. And here we have the function, and here we have the parameters. The particle system name, we're not going to do anything special with it, so I'm just going to keep it blank, just like the timer. The only times you want to actually give them names, well, you could give them names at any time. These are just internal names that they're used to reference within the actual engine of the game. It doesn't have anything to do with what happens in the game, unless, well, it does if your script is advanced enough, but for this particular function, it's not required to give it a name, so I prefer not to give them names whenever I see that I don't need to. Because if you give it a name, well, it doesn't matter. But the only times you need to give it a name is when you want to use a function like remove particle or destroy particle system, or like a remove timer. You would have to put the same name as the timer. But anyways. Alright, so this is the particle system file, so this one we need to fill in, and the one I want to use is ps underscore dust underscore impact dot ps, and that is the particle system. I just have it right here. If you don't know where they are, you can look up the particles folder in the root Amnesia folder, and you can see the name of all the particles. It could be a little hard to actually know how they look. If you place them in your level, you can see a little preview of them. Anyways, that's the file that's going to appear at the entity, which is going to be defined here, which is another string. So in that entity is going to be the passage. Well, no, it's not going to be the passage. It's going to be one of the random 4 areas that we made. So if you open up the editor here and we zoom in on the areas again, this is number 1. We called it area particle underscore 1. So I'm going to call it area particle underscore, but then I'm going to go outside of the string because what all of these 4 areas have in common is the name area particle underscore. They all start with area particle underscore, but they have 1, 2, 3, or 4 at the extension. So I'm going to, after that, I'm going to do plus, and then I'm going to add a random variable that could end up being 1, 2, 3, or 4. So what we do right there, we go to this page, and near the top in general, we do this function called randint, which generates a random number. And if we paste that in between the comma and the plus, it's like a function within a function. So it's going to add a number that's going to be added to the string during the game, and then we're just going to define the minimum value and the maximum value. So it's going to be it's inclusive, by the way, so it's going to be a value between 1 and 4. So it could end up being 1, 2, 3, or 4, and that is completely random. And yeah, oh, and if you copy the semicolon, remove it because it's not going to be there. And then there's the save, whether you want to save it or not, and I'm gonna put that to false because, well, whatever, doesn't matter, just put it to false so we don't have any problems with that. And that is all we need for the particle system. Whenever we click it, it's going to create a dust at a random area, if you understand it so far. Alright, so that's some of the smaller things done with. Alright, so before I add anything more in here, I'm just gonna finish that little decrease hit count thing. So I'm gonna make another void here, and it's going to be the decrease timer. So we added the timer up here, decrease hit count. So we're gonna put the same name in here, and then we're gonna put the parameters of the timer, which is string and in as timer. And after that, we're gonna open and close the block. And this is where, if you're not quick enough, it's going to decrease the variable. So it's quite simple. All we do is we copy this add local variant, paste it in the code, and instead of adding one, we subtract one. So we put minus in there. And that is all we need to do for that to work. So now that whenever you click it, it's going to add one, and then it's going to take half a second and it's going to remove it again. But if you click it again and again and again, it's going to add before it reaches this timer to actually remove anything. So if within here we're going to, if the count equals to 3, that's when the thing is going to break. So hopefully you understand it so far, if you see where I'm getting at. So we're just going to do that right here. We're typing if open close parentheses, and if the interact count, which is the variable that we have right here, if this one is equals to 3, if it's equal to if it's equals to 3, which whenever you click it, it's going to check it every time, so it will update every time you click it because of this, and it will update the amount of variables stored in this value every time you click it, so it's going to update pretty instantly, yeah. And if that is currently 3, then it's going to break the wall within the sub block. So inside here we just type, or we can go on the page here and do prop health, set prop health. We just search up that function, set prop health. It's a very simple one. You just paste it in right here, and set prop health. Pretty much it's going to set the health of the entity to 0, which in other words is going to break. So the string of the entity is passage, and the health that it's going to be set to is 0. And there you go. Now actually so far if you were to run it right now it would work, but there are some other details that you probably want to just add. Actually, let's add those sound effects, and yeah, I guess let's just add the sound effects. And this is going to be a small, this is going to be another timer within, but it's going to be a little special timer that's going to be it's going to be written a little strange. It's not one of the timers that I usually use, but it's pretty much, it's going to limit the amount of sounds by like you can only play it once every half second, and therefore it's going to be within a timer that is half a second, so it will only run once every half second. So no matter how many times you click it, it's only going to play the sounds a certain amount of times, so that you won't spam your face with sounds. Alright, so we do another if statement with parentheses again, and inside there we're going to go and find a function over here again. So it's next to timer, so if you go to add timer, you can go below it, there's a remove timer. I'm not going to use that one. We're going to use the one get timer time left, and not the semicolon. Copy that, paste it into the parentheses, get timer time left, and the name of the timer, well, we haven't made that timer yet, so I'm not going to type anything there yet until I make it. but it's going to, if the time is equals to 0, which it always is before it's made. I mean, the timers are always expired. They have always expired. The time is always 0, if you know what I'm saying. The time is always 0 unless it's actually still running. So pretty much it's going to run this the first time as well, because the time left is 0. But within this code block that is checking for this, it's going to add the actual timer that it checks for, and therefore it's only going to run if the timer has expired. So it's like an inverted timer in a way. So we can just do that right here. Add timer, parentheses, semicolon. I know this function, so I'm just going to quickly go through it, and 0.5 is the amount of time that is going to be the max, or the minimum amount of time for this to loop. And then there's a string at the end. I'm not actually going to make a function for it because it's not going to execute anything once it has expired, but it is going to need a name for the internal one. So this is, as I said, it's like an inverted timer. It's to limit the amount of things that can happen. And I'm gonna name it, let's just call it limit sound, and then we type the same thing in the get timer time left. And also next to it we're going to of course add the time, or else it won't actually do anything. But yeah, got a little distracted there. Okay, so let's add the sound effects. They're pretty simple, but if you go to the page once again, search up GUI sound. It's a function called play GUI sound, and this one will pretty much just play a sound in your face with no 3D. The other version of it would be play sound at entity, which would play a sound somewhere in the map, so that if you were to turn your face, you would the sound would shift between left and right in your headset if you're wearing one. But this one will just be flat in your face. It doesn't really need to be anything else anyways. The sound file name, this is the name of the file, is going to be impact underscore rock underscore low 3 .ogg. Really? Apparently it is. I thought they would use SNT files, but anyways, apparently you just use the OGG here. Okay, so this is when you click it, it's going to make a little, like a rock something. I can't make rock sounds. Anyway, it's going to make a little rock sound because as you can look in the actual thing, it is a fragile wall, so it would make sense to make a little rock sound if you were to like slightly punch it to crumble away. So it's going to play that sound at the volume of 1, just simply enough. And then I'm going to copy that line again and paste it directly below it, and it's going to play another sound as well. So I'm just going to replace this with 15 underscore rock underscore break, and that will play the sound file that is called this, and it's pretty much adding to this. And yeah, so as you can see, if the timer is 0, which it is to start with, it's going to add the timer, which is half a second, so that if you were to click this again within that half second, it would not happen again. So it will only play these sound files once every half second if you were to spam click it. But if you are spam clicking it, then it will break before you were to actually hear them again. So it's just a little detail. And we are pretty much actually done by now. I'm just going to add that little thing. If you remember that I clicked on the wall here and I added break wall just to add a little sanity boost. Yeah, I'm just going to add that, and it's really simple. Or just void break wall. Yes, like that. And pretty much it's just going to add the sanity boost. This is not required. I just like to do it. And string and in as entity is the first parameter. The other one is string and in type. So what kind of type it is, that's just part of the function. If it's pick up, break, or on ignite, but since it can only break this type of entity, that's when it's going to happen. And open the block, close the block, and we're just going to give sanity boost small, open close parenthesis done. We are done. Save the file, save the map if you haven't already, and let's run up the game and see how it looks. Alright, here we have loaded the level again, and here's the wall. As long as you have an actual player interaction on the entity, it will show this hand when you look at it. So if you were to click, it plays that sound effect and it makes the particles right here. But you would have to click 3 times within half a second to actually break it, unless you throw something, but that's already made, so I'm not even going to do that. You don't need any script for that, but you can click it as many times as you wish, but you would have to click it 3 times in a row to actually break it, as I said. So and also the sounds are limited, the sounds that are here. I'm clicking about twice the speed of the sound, but yeah, well, it would be hard to notice, but it's there. If I hadn't had it, it would have been like it would be weird having a lot of sounds at the same time. Anyway, let's click it 3 times fast. Apparently I had to click like nearly 5 times, I think, but that just means that even if you click it twice when well, you add 1 and then you add another variable and then you lose 1, so you have 1, but then you add 2 more and then you lose 1, add 2 and lose 1, you would still stack up on them. So yeah, and as I said, you might want to put something to jump on because it can be a little tricky to jump up here. It's possible though. And yeah, that's actually everything I need to say about that, I think. So that's the end of the tutorial, and yeah, if you found it helpful, I really appreciate if you would like the video. It motivates me to make more of these tutorials, and also, well, I'll just thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.